Lot to do over the next 60 minutes. Sammy Arnell will be here as he always is. Dianna Russini of The Athletic and the Scoop City podcast joins us to talk about the Super Bowl and a lot of things going on around the NFL. We'll get into that coming up in about 10 minutes. News from the NBA to talk about, which we'll do here in a couple of minutes, but also throughout the show, and a whole bunch of other good stuff as we move through the next 60 minutes. Glad to have you with us, as I said. We start things out as we always do on this Wednesday. It's time for the big story. And the big stories today emanate from the NFL and from the NBA, and we start things out in the association where we talked about it yesterday on the show. Kurt Heelan of Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com was here. The potential of a deal with James Harden going to the Cleveland Cavaliers, that potential turning into reality on Tuesday afternoon with the news that Harden was headed to Cleveland in exchange for Darius Garland and a second-round draft pick. And look, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but I said this yesterday in the SportsWrap short, and I'll say it here. Cleveland, you get what you deserve. You get what you deserve at this point. Because everybody knows who James Harden is at this point. We all know the kind of player he is, the personality he is, the kind of selfishness that exists within him when it's all about, him and having to go to a contender and now he's happy. How many times have we seen this story? From Oklahoma City to Houston to Philadelphia to the Clippers, now to Cleveland. And what's the one constant throughout all of it? He doesn't win. You don't win with him. And it's amazing that another team has bought into this. That another team's drinking the James Harden Kool-Aid. That they're going to be the ones where it works out different. That they were so much smarter than Oklahoma City, Houston, Philadelphia, the Clippers. No, they just didn't know. They didn't have the right team. They didn't have the right mix. They didn't have the right player. We're going to figure it out in Cleveland. Look, good luck. I said it yesterday. I'll say it again. Good luck. I was just having a conversation with somebody from Cleveland who was watching us on Rock Sports Entertainment. One of our great affiliates out there in Ohio. I was just talking about it with him yesterday. I don't even know his name. So hello, Candy Corn, because I don't even know his real name. But he messaged me. He was watching the show, and I messaged him back. We had a little nice back and forth on X. And I root for Cleveland. I root for that city because I've been there. I've spent some time there. Almost went to go work for one of the great sports radio stations there, The Fan. I love Cleveland. Fan base is just starved for winning. I love that fan base. But don't get your hopes up with James Harden. I'm telling all of you right now watching. Don't get your hopes up with James Harden. But if you want to look at the bright side, at least the organization's going for it there. And I like I've said a million times, you can't fault an organization when they go for it. Big story number one. Big story number two comes from the NFL, where it is time to put the Pro Bowl out of its misery. You see Steve Young on the screen. And the reason I start with an image of Steve Young on the screen is I was watching Dan Patrick yesterday. And Steve Young was talking about why the Pro Bowl went away. And the story basically was, guys were getting hurt. Guys didn't want to, guys were playing the game at half speed. There was the inherent danger of having your star players potentially get injured in the game. And eventually, from a logistical standpoint, it just didn't make sense for the league anymore. That the Pro Bowl had to go away. But what has replaced it? And this is why it's always interesting when people say, fire the manager, get rid of so-and-so, fire this coach, trade this player. And my answer to that, whenever people say that, is when fans get into that fire somebody mode, is what are you replacing it with? Because I got news for you. What you replace it with might be a whole hell of a lot worse. And the Pro Bowl is the embodiment of be careful what you wish for, because everybody screamed for years about how we had to get rid of the Pro Bowl. And then we got rid of the Pro Bowl, and now you have this. You have this, or this. There, let me say this. This. Jalen Hurts walking around with a flag sticking out of his jogging pants and flipping balls in after walking into the end zone. This, nobody should have to pay to see this. Nobody should have to pay hard-earned American dollars on this crap. And that's what it is. And that's why I watched about 30 seconds of it before I knew. Any informed consumer that actually watched that whole thing, with all due respect to ESPN, all the power to you. You must really love football. Because this isn't even football. This is a farce. This is a joke. And Steve Young was right when he discussed why on the Dan Patrick Show, why this game as it had been had to go away. But they went from here to there and didn't even try something in the middle of that. There's got to be something. And I don't know the answer, but it can't be this. It can't be that, what we were just watching. There's got to be something better that the NFL could come up with all these bright minds and all these smart people and all these business people. The NBA is evolving. Boy, and remember people used to go crazy about the MLB All-Star Game. Man, you should be thrilled about the MLB All-Star Game. And what hockey's doing now with the Four Nations and all that stuff. Because that was an absolute joke and a disaster again last night. I'd be shocked if there is even a Pro Bowl next year, coming off of what we watched. Well, I say we. I watched 30 seconds of it on Tuesday night. If you watched that, I feel bad for you. There's a lot of options on TV. You could watch something better than that. And that's the big story. But it's going to get better. Because Dianna Russini from Scoop City and The Athletic is next. Welcome back to the show. Good to have you all with us. SportsWrap continues. We're talking football because it is Super Bowl week. We have labored and she has labored. Dianna Russini of The Athletic, the Scoop City podcast, hangs out with us. Saw her on, one of the finest humans I know, by the way. Because she was on with Jim Rome yesterday. Why is she coming on my dopey show? I don't know. She can go on with people like Jim Rome. She doesn't need to go on my dopey show.
He's the best, isn't he?
Rome?
Jim Rome's a good guy. I enjoy him, and please do not sell yourself short. I love being with you guys. I love talking some football. We always rip through a lot of different topics. Let's get to it.
All right, let's talk about it. Let's talk about this matchup because honestly, it's Wednesday and we've barely talked about it because quite frankly, I think we're just all bored, having waited a week and a half. There isn't a lot of sizzle when it comes to, the players involved in the conversations, and I don't see people making a lot of headlines. I think Super Bowl weeks have become largely boring for that reason. Dianna, give me a feel for what you're getting out there right now in the Bay Area.
Yeah, not a lot of superstars playing in each of these games, right? I'd say the head coach of the New England Patriots is probably the biggest name in this matchup.
Wow.
I bet you if I walked around San Francisco right now, there would be people struggling to name Seattle Seahawks players. But it doesn't matter because they're here and they're going to learn more about them as the week goes on. And I think you're right. There hasn't been a lot of big headlines coming out of these press conferences on purpose, as I know that their coaches have been telling them, like, let's tone this thing down. We do not need to put targets on our back. We don't need to play into any competitive advantage for the other team. So at the same time, I keep going back and forth on how this is even going to play. Right, Drake May has not done well in the postseason. Right, the Drake May that I voted for MVP in the regular season has not shown up.
You voted for Drake May for MVP?
I did.
Are you also a Hall of Fame voter that didn't vote for Belichick? Come on. How do you vote for Drake May over Matthew Stafford?
Because I believed that Drake had around him was way more challenging than what Matthew Stafford had around him. He's the reason why they were able to win so many games. Okay, so we agree to disagree on that one. But that being said, does Drake May have the ability to calm down? Because that's what it feels like. It feels like the pressure's gotten to him a bit over the past 3 games in the postseason. So I think if they can protect him, and I talked to Stephon Diggs about this the other day, about Drake's nerves of, and Diggs was like, it's not nerves. It's not this like I can't do it energy. It's I'm aware of the stage I'm on. And it just brings a different kind of pressure in your head mentally, and you have to find a way to get it out. And Diggs was saying he thinks the AFC Championship game in Denver was the most helpful thing for for Drake. He's like, I think he kind of realized this is gigantic in his head, but I can do it. And I think that could help him play in some nice weather here in San Francisco.
Dianna, tons of other news all around the league coming out this week, kind of keeping us up during Super Bowl week. A piece of that is Matt Nagy landing in New York as their offensive coordinator. My question, I guess, about all of that is how really desirable was that New York offensive coordinator job? You end up with a guy like Nagy, who was left by the wayside by Kansas City. They just kind of said they didn't want him back. Allegedly was in the running for that Tennessee job, but they ultimately go with Robert Saleh. Then he ends up as kind of the last OC, the second to last OC, I guess, with the Jets, right? But they fired theirs late. How desirable was the New York Giants offensive coordinator job?
Yeah, well, Matt Nagy, the Kansas City Chiefs really thought that Nagy was getting that Tennessee Titans job. Like, they thought, like, this is Mike Bergonzi, the general manager of the Titans, is not only a former colleague of Matt Nagy, but very, very good friends. So not only did the Kansas City Chiefs think that he was getting it, I think the whole world thought that Matt Nagy was probably going to get the Titans job. So then when he didn't and became available, obviously that changed the chances for other coordinators out there. And there are not that many, as you're seeing. Like, it's not like there are so many. I mean, there are a lot of names. I mean, upper tier types. Look at Philly. Look how hard it was for them to land on who they wound up bringing in. So in terms of the desire of coaching Jackson Dart, I always went into that believing that more people would want to coach him. Yet I don't really think that was the truth in the end, because look how this played out. Cliff Kingsbury's still out there. I was surprised they didn't go harder to try to get him in to make him the offensive coordinator. But look, Matt Nagy brings tons of experience. He's super level-headed. He's seen a lot. And I think mixing this with now, a CEO type head coach who is going to bring out, there's a lot of expectations in New York.
Sure.
You bring in a guy like John Harbaugh, you better start winning quick.
Is this the most conversation you've ever heard around the Hall of Fame?
Yes, I've never called so many people about the Hall of Fame. I've never cared so much about the Hall of Fame. Just because it's so ridiculous and so stupid that this is how it went down. And obviously very unfair to Bill Belichick, who is more than deserving.
How about Robert Kraft?
Also ridiculous and ludicrous that he's not in.
Is it a numbers game like a lot of people claim, though? Is it just because of the system and the setup, or was this a concerted effort to keep those guys out in the first ballot?
I think people get personal. I do. Human beings are casting these votes. We're not depending on AI using statistics, because if we did, they'd be in. It wouldn't even be up for grabs. This proves to you that it's emotional, because they have the best numbers than anyone else that was up for it this year.
Is your sense that there will be changes in the way the voting is done?
No.
Really?
I don't think it is. I think they're taking a lot of heat. I think there will be conversations. I don't have any knowledge of it. Like, I haven't made any calls with the league about. Yeah. We asked Goodell about it the other day to his press conference.
Yeah.
I don't think that systems change like this. Like, the way they do these, they're not the type to go, all right, now we need to make an adjustment here. I don't believe it. I think they're just kind of stick with how they've been doing it.
Dianna Russini is hanging out with us from The Athletic. She does a great job on the NFL Scoop City podcast as well. I'm going to try and hold her for one more quick segment. Come back. I've got to get to some stuff with you as it relates to some more of what Roger Goodell had to say the other day and how players are responding, reporting according to the NFLPA when it comes to a potential 18-game season. Also want to get more thoughts on this Super Bowl, which takes place on Sunday in Santa Clara. Sports Wrap continues. Continuing with Dianna Russini from The Athletic and the Scoop City podcast, who is so kind to hang out with us on the show at the Super Bowl, joining us from her hotel. Lots of parties, and you doing a lot of the party scene while you're there, or what?
No, I'm a journalist. I'm very serious. All I do is work. I just sit in this room by myself. Yeah. No, I very much go and enjoy. I'm going to try to see Chris Stapleton. He's playing, I think, Friday night. I'm going to try to get to that. But I've toned it down a little. I used to go crazy, but now sleep is very important when you're doing Super Bowl week.
All right, let's talk about the game again from the perspective of the Seahawks. We talked about it from the perspective, obviously, of the Patriots. But when you look at this game from the perspective of Seattle, look, I think they win by 10 points minimum. Yeah. I just don't. 4.5 points makes no sense to me from a spread standpoint. I think they win this thing by 10 to 14. I think it could be a whole lot worse. If something's going to go wrong for Seattle, is it as simple as Sam Darnold?
It's funny when you look at it that way, and when you just compare the rosters and their skill sets at this point in the year. And this offense in the NFC Championship was fantastic with Sam Darnold. They won because of Sam Darnold. If he's not playing, if he doesn't have a game like that, they're not going to win. And the Rams know that. And I think it's killing them because I believe that they thought this was going to be the moment that was too big for Sam. And I think Sam was able to overcome that. Now, despite the fact that he did so well in the NFC Championship game, there are definitely still questions. Is the Super Bowl going to feel too much for him? And sometimes it's the small things of just in the pregame, the national anthem. I've had players tell me this where it's made apparent that this is the biggest stage and you can feel the millions of people watching. If he lets his head go there, he's in trouble, right? If whatever Sam did before the NFC Championship game to cool the nerves and just play his game, it was good. But in terms of defense, the Seattle run defense is really good. And at this point right now, the Patriots run game isn't great outside of Drake May's legs. So matchup wise, I lean towards what you're kind of laying out. It just makes a lot more sense for Seattle to win this game.
Jen Mueller, Seahawks sideline reporter on the show tomorrow. Go ahead, Sam.
Speaking of Sam Darnold, Dianna, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah fired in Minnesota over the course of the last week. What is with the timing of this? It's all very confusing to me. It seemed very late in the whole front office carousel to just be firing somebody.
Yeah, I didn't get the sense that he did anything between January 1st and the end of the month that got him fired. I think they made the decision after the regular season to have some really honest conversations about the direction of the team. And the owners heard what people had to say in the building about the direction. And I do think there were some people in Minnesota who felt that Kwesi may not have the experience and time in the league to really handle that role. And I don't believe ownership was ready to move on from him, though. I do think they thought he deserved another year. And they took a few days really, before they said, you know what, we have to do it. We have to do it now, and we're going to regret it. And don't count out that Sam Darnold playing the Super Bowl doesn't affect that. Again, back to what we were just talking about, Jason, of like, these are human beings at the end of the day. And human beings are sitting here. Owners are just like us. They're watching a guy they let walk play in a Super Bowl that the Minnesota Vikings probably could be playing in if they had the quarterback right.
18-game schedule. NFLPA says there's no appetite for it. Is this just a negotiating tactic early on here?
Yeah. They're not going to go. They're not going to start this thing and go, yeah, let's do it, and then it gets done. They're going to have to play hardball on this. Everyone just is operating at this point, like that's going to happen. That this is what the league is going to look like, just the way international games are going to continue to grow, which is why I think we're going to have a Super Bowl internationally, probably in the next 10 years. And this is just a business-driven league, and there's so much money in it, and there's obviously so much money in getting another game, and I think players just know that at this point. I just think the PA is going to do everything they can to try to put up a fight, but they're not going to probably be able to win in the end.
One more for me, and then I'll throw it to Sam. Steve Tisch. This is ugly. I mean, it doesn't look good. If I'm Roger Goodell, I'm on the phone to every single owner and saying, you tell me right now, are you going to show up in one of these documents? Because there's still plenty more to come out of them. Like, I would want to know. And I also want to know, did Roger Goodell know this was coming? Did anybody tip him off? This league knows everything about everything. I just find it hard to believe that the league didn't know Steve Tisch was going to be in these papers.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would be surprised if they were shocked by it. I do know that all teams have gone through this before, where they've searched this to make sure their names aren't popped in, because there are a lot of these billionaires swim in the same circles. So I'm sure there was lawyers involved with all these owners even before this came out, to just make sure everyone was clean if they knew Jeffrey Epstein, and to make sure that, I mean, I don't know if anyone else would have anything that would hurt them, but making sure that there's nothing that the league needs to know. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't think Roger Goodell was shocked by it.
Will the league act on it?
Look, Roger's being really
coy.
Like he was like, oh, we're going to look into this. Well, what does that mean? So I'm going to guess yes. I'm going to say that because no one's going to let this go, and they shouldn't.
Dianna, in the last minute we have here, you obviously have spent a lot of time early in your career in the D.C. area. Wednesday morning, we got the announcement the Washington Post is shuttering its sports department. As somebody who works for The Athletic, as somebody who spent time in the D.C. sports market, what does that mean to sports coverage for fans in D.C.?
Yeah, it's a really sad day. It's a bad day for journalism, and we've obviously heard the rumors of the last few weeks that this was going to go down. On a personal level, I know so many people who work there, and this can't be easy. I even had a colleague at The Athletic who left The Athletic to join the Washington Post a few months ago. Ugh. And so now he was just laid off. And, The Athletic is growing, and there's obviously the New York Times owns us. So we're fortunate that journalism is important to our company. It scares me to think of, if the Washington Post, the place where if you wanted to be a journalist, that is where you wanted to work at some point. If they're willing to move on like this, is this just going to get worse for every other outlet? Are we all in trouble? And it's just, the thing is, if you're a reader, if you're a consumer, if you're a fan, this is not good for you. This isn't just about people's jobs. So yeah, I'm really bummed out about this.
Dianna Russini does a terrific job with The Athletic, the Scoop City podcast, and always generous with her time. I've enjoyed having you on throughout the season. Let's do it again in the off season after you've had a chance to sort of unwind a little bit.
Yes, can't wait for that, guys. Thank you so much.
Welcome back. Good to have you all with us on this Wednesday edition of the show. Thanks to Dianna Russini from The Athletic and the Scoop City podcast. Always love visiting with her. Good times. I saw her on with Rome. It's like, people still go on Jim Rome's show?
On with Roan talking about how hard she plans on partying this week out at the Super Bowl.
I hope her husband didn't hear that. I don't think he's out here. I don't think he's out there. I didn't ask her. Yeah.
Can I just,
all right, go ahead.
If I were my own significant other, and gosh, maybe this is just a conversation I'm reliving from years past, but if I were my own significant other, I would not want to follow my significant other out to Radio Row either. Ugh. All it is a ton of people all over a very crowded area for way too many days together. You get way too familiar with people you really shouldn't. It starts to smell weird after a while. I would not want to go. I would thank the Lord that my house I had to myself while my significant other was gone. That's just a note for our friend Kevin.
Okay. I vowed yesterday on the show that we will be at Radio Row next year. in LA. And my husband's like, great, I can't wait to go. And I was like, no, you're not going. You're not going. That's not happening. Who is going somewhere is James Harden on the move. We heard about it yesterday, and Sham Charania had it the night before, with James Harden going to the Cleveland Cavaliers in exchange for Darius Garland and a second-round pick, Sam Yarnell. Look, I said it in a SportsWrap short yesterday. If you're not subscribed on the YouTube channel, go and do that. Buyer beware at this point. You know what you're getting if you're Cleveland. Good luck and good bowling, as we say. I'm never a fan of trading for James Harden. I'm never a fan of being in the James Harden business. Good luck, Cleveland.
Not at all the incorrect take, right? And it goes back, the video from the Dallas Mavericks host from years ago went re-viral again yesterday because it was an all-time take about what James Harden actually is. With all that said, with all of that already out there, something, Jason, that you and I have talked on this show and with Kurt Heelan, both on and off the air for weeks at this point, has been, man, after what happened last year with the Cavaliers and how they've been this year, it just hasn't looked the same. They just need something to ignite them. They just need something to ignite that locker room. And the East is wide open. What's preventing them from getting over that hump? Well, James Harden may not be exactly what you want to get to an NBA Finals, but nevertheless, it's something to try and ignite that locker room, and I'm not going to fault them for trying anything to try and make this team just that much better.
They've won 8 of 10, by the way. Making a deal for him when you've won 8 of 10 is kind of weird. But at the same time, I would be a hypocrite if I said I'm not a fan of them doing this deal from the perspective of going all in, because I was the guy that said, I'm all about it. I will always support a team for going all in. It may not be the right decision, but at least they're trying to do something to go all in. And kudos to the Clippers. They get Darius Garland, who, when healthy, is a good player, and you get a second-round pick out of it, and you're out of the James Harden business. Nikola Vucevic, we had our friend Kurt Heelan on the show yesterday. Kudos to him, because what did he say on the show? Celtics were looking for a big. Little did we know they'd get him the same day that Kurt was on the show talking about all these different things. But Vucevic goes to the Celtics. They give up Anthony Simons. Great deal for the Celtics. I just wonder what it points to when it comes to Jason Tatum.
I wonder what it points to when it comes to Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jason Page. This feels like the precursor, the money mover, the way you just got to make that one move to make everything compliant for a trade that you have worked out with the Bucks for Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't know. It feels a lot more like this was the move to move the salary, to get the numbers right, to bring in Giannis for the Bulls. And yeah, from a Celtics standpoint, you're right. It's like what we talked about with Kurt earlier this week on the show. This is a team that is, one everyday big away from being maybe the favorites in the Eastern Conference. Now they've got it. We'll see how they can do come playoff time.
Well, before we get to the last deal that I wanted to talk about, which is Jaren Jackson, you bringing that up is interesting because there's all this smoke out there about whether or not Draymond Green is the component that helps put the deal over the top for the Warriors when it comes to getting Giannis, which clearly they are who they are infatuated with trying to get to pair with Steph Curry, and then next year Jimmy Butler when he comes back, from this injury that he suffered. I wonder, if we've seen, if this year, even if he doesn't get dealt at the deadline, I wonder if at this point it's a fait accompli that Draymond's done with the Warriors. Because once it's like when you go to your wife and say, let's take a little break. Let's take a little break. You go. I'll get an apartment. Or you have a girlfriend and you're like, we're gonna take a break. That's like what it kind of.
Ross and Rachel from Friends.
It kind of feels like that's where they are right now with Draymond. They're like, we're looking at our options. That's what it kind of feels like. So I wonder if Draymond is done there, whether a deal gets done at the deadline or not. Kudos to the Utah Jazz. Jaren Jackson's a great addition, as they continue to try and build things there. I wonder what that points to when it comes to Ja Morant being dealt before the deadline on Thursday, because clearly this is Memphis telling their fans, we are blowing this up. And if you're blowing this up, then Ja Morant's got to be the next piece that moves, Sam.
Yeah, the Jazz also part of a weirder NBA news story from yesterday, as it seems like the Pacers may be involved in some unethical tanking against the Jazz, Jason. I don't know, but I did like the move. I did. Don't get me wrong. I am very high on Jaren Jackson Jr. as you are.
Yeah, I think it's a great move for them. There is more news to get to involving the state of Utah, though. If you haven't seen this story, it is the most bonkers thing that I saw yesterday that doesn't feel like it's getting nearly enough press, but we will talk about it next. Welcome back. Coming up in 10 minutes, it's odds and ends. Plenty to talk about there. Good news for Live Golf. And bad news if you're a fan of journalism. Sam Yarnell, what might be the strangest story I saw to cross my screen as I sit here all day and scan and scour for things to talk about on this show. Boy, who thinks it's a good idea? I mean, all I need to do is cue B-roll right now of fans acting like idiots at sporting events as I talk about this story. The Utah State Legislature has a proposal on the table for legislation that would allow concealed weapons at Utah Jazz and Mammoth games, Sam Yarnell. I want you to all just conceptualize this. Put this vision in your head. And I'll keep giving you shots of, people doing dumb things, jumping through tables on fire at football games and tailgate parking lots, and people fighting in the upper tiers of stadiums of football games and stuff that goes on in arenas. I want you to think about all that and then add the element of firearms to it and alcohol and whatever drugs somebody might be on and how crazy fans get. Oh, and the occasional, hey, I lost my parlay because, some... And then let's add guns to it. And tell me how this makes sense, Sam Yarnell. Please tell me how this makes sense.
Yeah, it's just, I'm doing some very light reading on it now from the fine folks over at the Salt Lake Tribune. Something we'll get to later in the show. Need to save our local newspapers. But Jason, it seems like it's legislation from part of the legislature in Utah that's just not quite thought out. There's a very easy counter to all of this legislation, and there are exactly 0 places in the continental U.S. where the Second Amendment applies that you're allowed to both purchase alcohol and openly carry a firearm. I would think that the number of those places, those indoor places where you're allowed to open carry a firearm and purchase alcohol for immediate consumption, have to be in the very low single digits, if any. And do I think, to your point, that one of those places should be where we entrust fine folks like yourself and myself to spew our very well thought out points about sports? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. No, it's just things that don't mix, like oil and water, just two things that shouldn't really go together. It doesn't seem very thought out.
In that story you're looking at, does it say anything about what the Mammoth, what Ryan Smith thinks about this? He's the owner, right? He's the guy that owns the Mammoth and Jazz.
It seems like this has all not even come to the attention of the Mammoth or the Jazz yet. Yeah, it's all just a bunch of politicians talking about it and the implications that it would have.
You just cost me my parlay. Pop, pop. What what are we doing here? This is not. I don't even know if sports betting's legal in Utah. Not that it matters.
Do you think Ja Morant would then tuck a gun into his jersey when they played at the Jazz?
He's gonna demand a trade to Utah. I mean, it's crazy. I can't get past it. I'm just like, the levels of stupidity in America sometimes blow my mind. And this is not a Second Amendment thing, by the way. This is I have been begging my husband to let me get a gun because we live in Nevada, which is open carry. Okay, I see people at a Starbucks and they're strapping to their hip Like, it's weird. For somebody who came from living in California for so many years and New York, where the gun laws are so much more restricted, to move to a place like Nevada, and just see guns everywhere, like, just, it's normal. You almost feel like you have to get one at that point, which is exactly what the gun lobby wants, by the way, is you to feel like you have to have one because everybody else has one. And then before you know it, it's the Wild West and we all just have guns. My husband won't let me get one, by the way. I know. Why are you looking at you? Just giving me that far off look?
No,
like, can you imagine
thinking,
me with one?
I'm honestly in a different world right now, living in a hypothetical. If Ja Morant did get traded to the Jazz, right? Do you think he'd do the thing like in Die Hard, like where you tape the gun to your back inside the jersey, then he hits a three, reaches behind his back, and just pulls it out? I think that's something that would be on the board for Ja Morant if this legislation passed and he got traded to the Jazz. I know, crazy hypothetical I'm living in, but it feels like a fun one.
I wonder if the leagues get involved. I wonder if the NBA and NHL are just like, no.
I don't think they can.
I don't know. It's an unprecedented situation.
Yeah, no,
it's
kidding,
not every day
right?
that a state legislature says, "Hey, let's put a gun in somebody's hand with alcohol easily accessible at a pro sports event where people just kind of tend to get out of hand from time to time."
Where tens of thousands of people also tend to conglomerate in one building at one time. Like, it just all doesn't make sense. It just all is kind of a little bit of a head scratcher. But yeah, Jason, from a league power standpoint, it would be interesting because I think that like all of those deals, and obviously I don't have full education on this, but I think that most of those deals are between the team itself as its own entity and the building or the jurisdiction itself as its own entity. I don't think it necessarily involves the league. So very interesting. And yeah, I wonder if Adam Silver steps up and says something, says, hey, we'll threaten to move the Jazz out of Utah.
I'll even go further. NHL Players Association, NBA Players Association. You want to be in an arena where fans are carrying guns around?
Yeah.
Seriously? Like, what are we doing? Gilbert Arenas might like it, but I don't know about anybody else. We're coming back. Odds and Ends wraps it up next. All right, getting set to put the wraps on this baby for a Wednesday. But before we do, a couple of reminders. Sports Wrap with Jason Page, the podcast version of the show, available Monday through Friday, wherever you get your audio podcasts, your favorite podcasting platforms. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon. Anywhere you get a podcast, you can listen to this show. Monday through Friday, 45 minutes. Go and subscribe to that today. We also have the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. This is something different. This is the place to go for all things Sports Wrap. The daily, Monday through Friday TV version of the show is available on our Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. 45 minutes, commercial free, waiting there for you early every afternoon. In fact, many times it's there before it even makes it to our affiliates because of the timing and the way sort of things work out every day. So if you want to watch us and you want to see what we have to say earliest, go and check out the YouTube channel. That is a place to watch the show. We also have Sports Wrap Shorts there. Sports Wrap Shorts, 1 to 3 minutes long, short, quick verticals on the top stories of the day as they break. NBA trade deadline, next couple of days, you are going to want to watch Sports Wrap and our Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel for Sports Wrap Shorts. Because any trade that goes down, we jump in on our YouTube channel and talk about it. That available again, Sports Wrap Shorts on our YouTube channel. Also available on our TikTok, the name there, Sports Wrap Jason Page, and on our Instagram, Sports Wrap Jason Page. And without any further delay on this Wednesday edition of the show, Sam Yarnell, time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. Well, look, congratulations to Live Golf. They have been trying to get official world golf rankings points. And it's been a major sticking point for them over the first few years of Live Golf. Well, they finally have official World Golf Rankings points. They didn't get all of them. They didn't get everything they wanted, but at least partial points. If you finish in the top 10, you can get official World Golf Rankings points now if you play on Live Golf. Maybe it's something that helps them keep some of the talent that they have remaining, with Patrick Reed leaving, Brooks Koepka leaving, Sam. A small victory for Live Golf.
Yeah, dead cat bounce. It's the end of Live Golf, and it feels like this is the market term dead cat bounce. This is the bounce that they get before they fully go under. Doesn't seem like a long-term thing. You look at the Live field, it is perils in comparison to what it used to be, and that's after the first round of the PGA taking their players. I'm sorry, Live Golf is not something that is going to be here for much longer.
I wonder, how much longer are the Saudis going to want to keep pouring that oil money in?
Right.
That's what remains to be seen, and that's literally the only thing that's keeping it afloat. That's floating this thing and allowing it to go. Remains to be seen, though, if it'll be able to hang around. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. The end of an era at the Washington Post and we talked about it briefly with our friend Dianna Russini, longtime sports journalist over at The Athletic and the Scoop City podcast. The entire sports department laid off at the Washington Post, Sam. And it feels like, the next death nail for journalism at large, but especially in this case, sports journalism, with an institution like the Washington Post getting rid of so many people.
Yeah, so people who watch the show closely enough know that I grew up in the D.C. area. I grew up reading the Washington Post every day. I grew up looking up to the sports writers and wanting to write for the Washington Post about sports myself one day. Your Thomas Boswells, your Barry Sverlugas, your Chelsea Janes. They were all incredible, role models in the early parts of my career. And it's heartbreaking for me that not only the city and the great fan base that is Washington, D.C., is now going to have to suffer the consequences of a billionaire not wanting to cover their own personal sports teams, which is absolutely stupid and a dumbfounded consideration. But also that sports reporting nationally will suffer based on the investigative journalism that the sports department did at the Washington Post, based on the constant reporting that they did on all teams across the country. It really is. It's an unfortunate day. Dianna said it, for journalism, not only for journalism in DC, not only for sports journalism, but for journalism on the whole, right? This is a day that will affect our careers for years to come. It'll affect the careers of thousands of people for years to come. And, all of us know somebody in this world who works at or worked at one point, the Washington Post. And, you just feel for those people who lose their jobs for no other reason than a billionaire being a little bit more selfish this week than he thought he was last week.
Yeah, and look, this all began, with the last election cycle when they started to do away with the opinion section. Everybody wants to go find out about that story. You can go look back at it. It all started there. And then a lot of people said, well, all right, we're going to just unsubscribe. So now they're hemorrhaging money even more so than newspapers today are hemorrhaging money. But let's be honest. For the money that Jeff Bezos has, the Washington Post is a drop in the bucket. So if you're going to have something that loses money but has a value to American culture and journalism in America today, the Washington Post is the last thing you get rid of. And this feels like the beginning of the end, obviously, for the Washington Post. And as Dianna Russini pointed out, Sam, it just feels like the beginning of the end for all of the major publications around the country when a paper like the Washington Post could go under so easily the way it has. It's going to do it for us on this Wednesday edition of the show. Thank you to Dianna Russini for hanging out with us. Thanks to you, Sam Yarnell. Thanks to all of you at home for watching. Lots more to do on tomorrow's edition of Sports Wrap. We'll continue to cover the NBA trade deadline and a whole bunch more. We'll see you then. Hi there. I'm Jason Page. You like what you're watching? Subscribe. We've got Sports Wrap shorts on this channel. We've got the show. We've got clips from the show. What else do you have to do? You probably follow a lot of other things that aren't half as exciting. They're not half as exciting as this show is. So what are you waiting for? Click the subscribe button, follow the channel, watch the content. Bye.